Right, we're going over System Concepts article number 28, the power of self. Humans have a single advantage over animals, the ability to shift the sense of self to various concepts. This is called clothing. In this, we have the ability to feel the emotions of another person, even though we have not gone through the same experience. Furthermore, we can make huge sacrifices for our country or an ideal. The will to receive, ego, provides focus and determination. Combined with the desired object, it is called our existence, man's essence. And here's a quote. I have already brought you to realize that man's essence, meaning his selfishness, defined as the will to receive, is only half a thing, and can only exist when clothed in some image of a possession or hope for possession. For only then is our matter complete, and can be called man's essence. From the article The Freedom by Balasulam. We constantly change throughout our daily routine, focusing on different transient objectives. Since we lack an overarching goal in life, it is considered as death, since we are inherently unstable and feel this state as a deep internal chasm of emptiness. We cover this feeling with a panoply of distractions, events, people, and addictions. Some desperately try to attach themselves to overzealous religious groups, cults, or movements to give their lives meaning over their mundane activities. They devote their essence to these various concepts. Their sense of self attaches to the ideals of these organizations. They imagine themselves as part of a greater whole, rather than acknowledging their own insufficient existence. Normally, their corporeality suffers according to the investment they spend in such ordeals. They look back at people in humanity who lack a definitive goal and mock them while their own lives deteriorate. The solution is to stop trying to attach the sense of self to something outside of us, but rather to attach to the source of our internality. This is the only anchor that never changes throughout our lives. We can expose more of its details and appellations without compromising its expansive appeal. This is called adhesion, dvikut, where we align ourselves to exploring our inner force instead of constantly searching for external meaning. This improves our stability, since we are tied to the only absolute point of reference we have, which is our own perception. We can then handle any situation that happens in our reality because of our strong bond to our perception. And here's a quote. Thus, when the children of Israel were rewarded with complete dvikut on that holy occasion, their vessels of reception were completely emptied of any worldly possession, and they were cleaved unto him in equivalence of form. This means that they did not have any desire for any self-possession, but only to the extent that they could bestow contentment, so their Maker would delight in them. And since their will to receive had clothed in an image of that object, it had clothed in it and bonded with it into complete oneness. Therefore they were certainly liberated from the angel of death, for death is necessarily an absence and negation of the existence of a certain object. But only while there is a spark that wishes to exist for its own pleasure is it possible to say about it that that spark does not exist, because it has become absent and died. However, if there's no such spark in man, but all the sparks of his essence, clothed in bestowal of contentment among their Maker, then it is neither absent nor dead. For even when the body is annulled, it is only annulled with respect to self-gratification, in which the will to receive is dressed and can only exist in it. However, when he achieves the aim of creation, and the Creator receives pleasure from him, since his will is done, man's essence, which clothes in his contentment, is granted complete eternity like him. Thus he has been rewarded with freedom from the angel of death. From the article The Freedom by Balasulam. Ascents and descents happen not because of changes in our reality, but rather from maturation of our perception. We normally have fear in our lives because of a constant desire to keep our possessions and relationships. Shifting our sense of worth from the value of our externality to the value of our perception is called the degrees of spiritual growth. When we have completed this transition, it is called end of correction. This is when we truly love ourselves because our worth is dependent on self alone. This is when we truly love ourselves because our worth is dependent on self alone. And here's the first workshop question. What is the sense of self? Daniel.
What's the question again? Sorry.
What is the sense of self?
It's the thing we identify with. So it's our physique, or it could be our family, or our riches, or our country, or the creator.
Gabriel.
And we identify with this because it has the components, two components: the desire for something and something to fulfill the desire. And when we have these two, we can identify with that, and there we have meaning in our life, or at least we want to be alive. But and this is why you see that people can die for countries and stuff like that, because they think that that's where their benefit is, and that's what they're trying to fulfill. And once one of those goes away, you decide for something, or that which fulfills it is like you don't have anything. You're left empty.
Maria.
What is the sense of self? I think that it's that what you are identifying yourself at. It could be that you are thinking of yourself as being the will to receive, or the ego, or it could be that you're not, since you know that you're of the ego, you're in the ego but not of it, so your sense of self is your true self. So it depends how you're looking, your perception, what you are, how you are viewing the situation, that determines what is it that you're looking at as your sense of self.
Mary.
Our sense of self is our point of perception. It's where we're identifying from when we view the world around us and what we're empathizing with, and but it's that point of awareness, a point of perception.
Moshe.
Yeah, I was just going to say almost the same thing. It's what we identify ourselves as, and also what value, really, sort of, what values do we identify from? Is it externality or internality? And it's obviously most important to be rooted in our internality and our perception.
Robin.
Yeah, our sense of self is what we clothe our will to receive with or in. So if it's external things, it's different activities, different whatever in the world, and it can. And the right way is to shift toward clothing it in our perception.
Yossi.
Our sense of self is that point, that almost hollow point from which we look at the world, and we know nothing but the fact that we exist. And in order to feel that, it has to be clothed in something, and so we clothe it by identifying or clothing that sense of self in various manners. It can be external, internal, and so forth.
Caesar writes, the ability to feel emotions from others, from the environment and the situations we are in. The sense of self is what we feel our value is. So you can have people that they feel that their sense of self is their family, and therefore if anything happens to their family, they feel like they're losing themselves. It can basically kill them. And you've got other people that, they don't feel their sense of self is their family, even though they have a family, but their sense of self is their business. So if anything happens to the stability of their business, they basically feel it changed to the stability of themselves. And we can go all the way up to having the sense of self as the creator, which is basically our internal power. The second question, why do we have instability in our lives? Daniel.
because our sense of selves can get shaken by external or even internal stimuli, imaginary stimuli.
Gabriel.
And these internal and external stimuli are always changing, and we have no control over them. Therefore, whenever that changes, we get stable again. So we should have something that goes over everything else and it's unchanging. And this goal is to become the creator, to reach adhesion with him. This is the only way to achieve that stability. As long as we keep persecuting and following things that we perceive as outside from us, we're never going to get them, because there's no such thing, something outside of you.
Maria.
Instability. Do you mean tension? Or I'm trying to see what sense of instability.
Like having, that our lives are unstable.
Okay. Well, I'll answer how I'm currently feeling it. I feel that one sense this instability because that we are identifying with or that we're putting value is threatening. It seems that it's not safe, and therefore I'm putting myself a value there, and it feels threatened, so I'm feeling very unstable. And I think it's because we're externally we're creating a strong bond or identification or sense of value where we shouldn't, and that's what I think.
Mary.
It can be unstable because we can, as humans, we can shift our sense of self to different things or including ourselves. And when our sense of self is not in our internal and in something external, those things can change and we can lose them, or, they can be harmed, or, we have, they can fluctuate, and when we're dependent on something outside of ourselves for a sense of self, it puts us in a fragile state.
Moshe.
I would say that instability in our lives is meant for us as a tool to sort of guide us and show us that we need to basically adjust our perception and our sense of self correctly. And just like anything, it's it's all about contrast. And without instability, you really don't know how far away you've strayed from your sense of self. So the instability is just a guide to show you what you need to work on. And that process obviously repeats, until you constantly keep adjusting.
Robin.
We have instability because our sense of self goes out and clothes itself in all kinds of things over a certain period of time, and by constantly having that our will to receive clothed in different things, it leads to a feeling of nothing. That's where instability comes from. It's just all this shifting of sense of self just brings instability, and that's inherent in our lives until we clothe our sense of our will to receive in our on the Creator.
Yossi.
I think we have instabilities in our life because we're not anchored to the correct anchor, which is our internality and our inner power. I do wonder, though, as Moshe pointed, whether this instability is part of a necessity, meaning like we are constantly looking for an inner place that we would never find, and we keep trying to find it and zooming on it, and finding ourselves zooming on the wrong things, feeling a little bit of instability, learning from that to better zoom next time on an even inner, cleaner part of us.
Cedric writes, ups and downs to see the contrast in our lives, perhaps causing stress so we can change. And Caesar writes, when we don't focus inside us, only in the external factors, we feel insecurity and unstable. So yes, the reason we feel instability is because we're constantly changing our focus on where we're applying our sense of self. And also, when we do focus on something for a long time, the issue itself changes. It goes through growth, it goes through tension, and that rocks our internality. And the idea is to basically connect yourself to the only thing that never changes, which is the goal, which is the creator. And when you change your sense of self to the creator, then you're not going to feel that instability. So the reason we have instability in our lives is because we're tied to forms that change. Third question, what is the solution? Daniel.
The solution to actually reach the goal, because as long as we identify with our ego and we are in a bad situation, in a potentially harmful situation.
Gabriel.
Exactly. It's establishing that which can cover everything, which is that quality of bestowal that can only be found when you change yourself to the creator, change your sense of self to the creator. And this is the only way, and because it's the only thing eternal that we could attach to and not move around. And since it's an internal thing, it's your perception. It requires an absolute change in the exterior. So that means that you don't have to go chopping down trees in order to enable to still to be free.
Maria.
Well, it seems that that itself, that is a weakness, is actually the strength. Meaning, sometimes we feel instability because we shifted. We shifted from one place to another. We're attaching or anchoring ourselves to X thing. Yet that's the same way that it becomes a strength, because we're still going to be shifting, but we're just going to be shifting or anchoring ourselves to the correct location or to the cleaner perception, if you will. And that's how we will be gaining a cleaner perception and a more in tune perception. It's as if I'm imagining the current of the waves, and if I'm incorrectly anchoring myself, I feel that I'm against the current and so forth. But if I tune myself in with this, anchor myself correctly, then it'll be flowing. It'll be a different perception to the same exact situation.
Mary.
By anchoring ourselves to our perception, and creating a strong bond, an unbreakable bond, or having our sense of self internal only and in eternity, versus anything that fluctuates and changes and forms and relationships and things like that, that are within time. And by working on that it's a process. So it's constantly adhering to our inner perception and strength.
Moshe.
Yeah, exactly. Just pretty much constantly rooting ourselves in our internality, in the creator, in the root of everything, and basically growing that bond through situations and experiences of tension, and always sort of being faced with new opportunities and always rising above that opportunity, thus gaining a stronger connection with our internality and the Creator.
Robin.
The solution of becoming stable from being unstable is to clothe our will to receive, clothe our desire, our ego on our point in the heart, on adhesion with the Creator, which is our internality and the real only stable thing we can focus on.
Yossi.
Asking what's the solution assumes that there's a problem, and I would like to say that it went through my mind that there's no problem, because yes, we need to keep our goal on the internal power, on the Creator, but thank God that we have instabilities, because had we not had those, we would have been dead.
Cedric writes, to know that there's none else besides him, the Creator. Bestowal instead of focusing on reception. And Caesar writes, anchor ourselves to the internal power. The solution for the instability in our lives is to make it stable, and the only thing that is actually stable is the Creator, since the Creator does not change. So what a better place to align your sense of self to basically feeling yourself as the Creator. And then you'll still go through experiences in reality, and still situations will change, and you'll go through situations of tension and even external frustration. But internally, you're going to be rock solid, because you know who you are, whether you're going to do an action or not. You know that you are the Creator. When you reach into correction, you don't need external stimuli or even internal stimuli to accept that. What do you think of the article?
I have a question, if I may.
Yes,
On this last question about instability, and where I have answered that, well, there's none else besides him, and that I should follow the Creator and to focus more on bestowal than on reception. So far, so good. But sometimes one has desires. So my question is, how could I align what I want in my life and at the same time applying these teachings?
What do you want in your life?
Well, at the end, it comes to family and goals and profession, things like that. So I think that if I only think in terms of bestowal and knowing that there's no one else besides him, I think I have a gap on how to match my interests with what I know could be a more fulfilling way of living. I don't know if I'm being clear.
What does bestowal mean to you?
Okay, I thought the one that was making the question was me. Well, I think that caring for others and looking for the interests of others and trying to make others' lives better, I think that would be bestowal for me.
So we have a slightly different definition for bestowal in system concepts. A more mature one where the idea is that the Creator, at the end of the day, if you're saying there's none else besides him, then who are you? And the Creator is basically a control mechanism. At the end of the day, the reason why people come to Kabbalah is not because they want the world to be a better place. They come into Kabbalah because they want control of their lives. And the thing is, what happens is they come into the society with wanting more control of their lives, and then they're told, oh, that's not the real problem. The real problem is that we're not connected. But that is not the goal. That is the means. the way you advance, the way you actually get control of your lives, is by being in a group of people where you can get discernments from and get impressions from to reach that goal. Since we don't actually want to advance, since it's painful, it's hard, we're not used to it, so we basically need a supporting environment to allow us to get there. So at the end of correction, will you be externally more nice to people and be helping others to empower themselves? Yes, you will. But the reason you're going to be doing that is because internally your sense of self has shifted to the creator, where you're going to be feeling that you have power of your lives and you're going to take responsibility of your life. And you're not going to give that responsibility to somebody else. You're not going to say, oh, there's a deity outside, or the society has to take care of me. No, you have to take care of yourself. You are the creator, and you're attracting all the situations in your life.
Okay, I'll try to think about that answer and find a meaning to mine. Thanks.
No problem. The idea is that we basically we give more of an egoistic spin on the Kabbalah concepts, because one of the problems is that when you're trying to use altruism, we normally have a very childish, immature concept of it. We think that bestowal is just being nice to each other. Well, if it's just being nice to each other, what do you need all the Kabbalah books for? What do you need all the degrees for? Just go out and, be nice. Go give charity. Go do often good deeds. What do you need Kabbalah for? The reason we need Kabbalah is because at the end of the day, we're actually shooting ourselves in the foot. We're basically self-sabotaging ourselves. And we need the wisdom of Kabbalah to actually allow us to clean our own desires and mature our own perception. And then we can actually help others. It's like in an airplane. You first have to put the mask on yourself, and then you can put the mask on others. But we forget about the part when we want to constantly help others without figuring out that we don't actually have anything to give to others.
I really like this article. Sort of like highlighted for me what I'm beginning to identify where I am right now is that I need to refocus on the goal. I ask myself, what is the goal at this stage? What am I looking for? Where am I heading? And so forth. And while you were reading it, I kept noticing that that I was getting answers to this question in me.
The sense of self is a very important part of this whole method, because the idea is that when you understand that the sense of self can change, then you can decide what you want to change it to. So just like a person who dies for their country, when they physically die, they're not actually dead, because they feel their sense of self is the country. So even though their body dies and even their perception dies, they don't feel that they're actually dying, since the object that they're clothing, they feel that it exists without them. So the idea is to change the sense of self to the creator, so then it doesn't really matter if you corporally die and even if your perception disappears. Since once you've identified that you are actually the creator, it doesn't really matter if there's an active perception or not. You're the creator.
What does it mean? What does it feel like not having an active perception? I mean, does that mean you have no perception? Because it feels like if you don't have perception, you're dead. What do you mean not having an act of perception?
That is, if, for example, someone's threatening your family and you're willing to sacrifice yourself for your family, how are you able to do that? Since the whole idea is that we're designed for self-preservation. So how is it we're able to sacrifice ourselves for our family if we've got this innate desire for self-preservation? Well, because the idea is we actually have self-preservation for our sense of self. So if our sense of self is aligned to our family, then our innate desire for self-preservation is going to apply to our family. If our sense of self is aligned to our business, then we feel our need to exist. We feel that what keeps us alive is our business. And then if our business tanks, many people, for example, when their sense of self, which is attached to their business and their business tanks and gets lost, they basically do suicide because they feel they're already dead. So it doesn't really matter if your perception or your physical body is alive or not. What matters is your sense of self, and your self-preservation aligns to that sense of self. So if your sense of self is the creator, then your desire for self-preservation is going to be to the creator and the goal, and not to your physical body or to corporeal events. And that's called being free from the angel of death.
I get everything you said with one thing which I may be hearing wrong, okay? But what I'm hearing is that what happens to your perception? I mean, it feels to me, let's put it this way, it feels to me that when you reach the end of correction and you feel that you are actually the creator, this is a very unique, specific perception that you've earned and that you're in it. And that is the perception you have. And I thought I heard you say earlier, and I may be mistaken, that it doesn't really matter your act of perception when you are a creator. So that's what kind of like got me a little confused.
When your perception, when your sense of self, in your perception, is that you are the creator, then it doesn't matter if you reach that end of it, right, which basically the eye is not seen, then it doesn't really matter if you're expressing power or not expressing power. It doesn't matter if you're alive or dead. That your sense of self is tied to the absolute point of reference, which is the goal, which is the creator. So then once your sense of self is aligned to that, then you have the freedom to do whatever you want in life. And you can express internal power, and you can make business deals, and you can take care of your family. You can do all this stuff, but you're not having the sense of this innate desire of self-preservation is not confusing you. It's not diluting you. It's not making you do self-sabotage. For example, sometimes when our sense of self is aligned to our family, we can't raise them correctly because we're constantly wanting to preserve them. So what we do is we put limitations on our children. We don't allow them to grow because we're so tied, our sense of self is to our family, that we basically like strangle them. We don't allow them to grow and prosper and innovate. So the idea is that by making that our perception is and our sense of self is the creator, then we're not bribed. We can actually take care of our family instead of constantly wanting to preserve them. We can actually make them grow. We can make them blossom.
I like that.
I really like this article. It so perfectly describes what the sense of self is and how it works. And I don't think I've ever seen that sense of self addressed that way. It was just a powerful, and I felt really well done article. So
I really like this article because it deals with a concept that we constantly refer to, but we never actually gave it focus. Right? The idea of each of these articles are basically to put focus on a certain specific concept. And I was seeing that that this concept wasn't clear enough, and this article just really cleans that concept and gives a great general overview to understand it.
I'm looking at the article, and it says at the beginning, humans have a single advantage over animals, the ability to shift our sense of self to various concepts. That is called clothing. And not arguing differently, but there are situations where we see animals do things that we think are suicidal. I mean, like whales throwing themselves on the beach and things like that. So taking that and saying, okay, they have not shifted their sense of self to something else. What's driving us to do that, or do we really care?
They're basically fixed, right? They're basically fixed, and you can look at this also in the animals and humans, right? So you've got people that most of their lives, their sense of self is set to one thing, and it stays that way. It doesn't grow. There's no innovation. There's no growth in their sense of self. So you could say that even in humans, most people are actually animals, where they stay with one, like they have a pre-selected sense of self, and they stay with that their entire lives. Like, for example, some people, they have a sense of self as the place they were born in, and then they never move. And when they're evicted, it destroys them. It basically kills them because their sense of self is tied to their specific house. You know, I've lived there my entire life. How could I move out? And they're evicted, and it just destroys them. They're never the same. They basically just like decay into nothingness, and then they die.
The spiritual group, like, is there to provide us with motivation to advance? Like, for example, oh, there are 13 people right now that really want to go. So I come here and I see that everybody's talking about it. And is this is the phase 3 group a part of this part of convincing to advance?
The difference between phase 2 and phase 3, in phase 2, it's what's the word I'm looking for? Unreal. It's artificial. It's fake. You come in, you basically say how everything's great, even if it's not. You say how the goal is great, even if you don't even know what the goal is. You're basically playing a game. And that's preparation for phase 3. In phase 3, we actually talk about the states we actually go through. So sometimes those states will be positive, and sometimes those states will be negative. But the goal, even when we're expressing a negative situation, it's in order for those concepts to be cleaned and then able to advance accordingly. So we don't care about if we're happy or sad. What we care about is advancement in phase 3. The goal of the group of phase 3 is not to convince you that advancement is great. That's your job. Your job is to use the discernments you get from the group and build inside yourself why you need to advance. It's unlike with the spiritual society where we think that the active part is on the society towards us. In phase 3 in the group, you have to do the active. The active is in each member, and there's no concept of the group being active. The group is actually passive. It's a still. It's a place you go each time. You talk about different concepts. You hear different concepts. The active part is on you, not on the group. The group is not responsible to get you to advance. That's your responsibility to advance yourself using the group.
Another sentence that caught my eye is the one that says, in this, we have the ability to feel the emotions of other person, even though we have not gone through the same experiences. Now, I was to a funeral yesterday, and I had two incidents in that funeral. It was a girl, 21-year-old, doesn't matter. She went after the army to a trip down in the South America, and she died from a heart disease. And her two younger sisters, when they stood up to talk, I suddenly felt an immense sadness that went right through me, like literally, boom. So I'm thinking, how does that tie into this sentence that we can move our sense of self to somebody else and feel what they're feeling? Is that what happened, or what actually happens there at those moments where in the funeral and they're standing up and then talking, and I suddenly feel this deep, deep sorrow, and I'm saying to myself, what do I have to do with this sorrow? It's not mine.
What was the sorrow on?
Look, they lost their younger daughter, the younger sister, and I can ask myself what's in that situation ignited and brought to life a sorrow that I have inside of me. That's another way of looking at it. But is it that, or is it really? I don't know. There's something here that sort of like is asking, where do I end and where do they start? Anyway, the question is not well defined.
At the end of the day, if let's say you were watching a movie, right? Let's say you were watching a movie of a funeral, and it was, an amazing sort of, 3D experience. So you're basically, hearing everything and watching it, and you've got like virtual goggles, so you're looking around and you're seeing it like it's reality. You're going to a funeral and you're going through the exact same experience. But of course, everyone in that experience, of course, doesn't exist since it's a virtual experience. But you would feel exactly the same. So the idea is that you're not actually feeling what they're feeling. You're feeling what you're feeling. You're feeling your own sensations and not actually feeling what they're feeling. When you watch, let's say, an emotional drama, they're actors. They don't actually care. They're just like, while they're doing it, they're thinking of their grandmother while they're doing it, or they're trying to imagine something, or they might be thinking what they're going to be eating for dinner, and they're bursting into tears and they're crying and you feel so sorry for them. Are you actually feeling their pain, or are you feeling your response to that situation?
My response to that situation. So going back to the article, what does it mean? In this, we have the ability to feel the emotions of another person, even though we have not gone through the same experience. Can we really feel the emotion of another person? Because from what you said right now, we can only feel things that are inside us, and we can never feel something which is another person's feeling, unless, of course, that another person is nobody else but us.
So the idea is that when we're feeling emotions of another person, we're able to activate emotions that we normally don't feel in ourselves. So the idea is you might live your life, for example, and never feel the sensation of envy. But then you watch a movie, and then you actually, it brings it out of you so much desire for envy. That desire is you're feeling the sensations of others within you, but it's your sensation of others, it's not them. You're not feeling them, you're feeling yourself. You're feeling your sensation of them. So you're feeling the emotions of another person within you. It's not that you're feeling the emotions of another person as if they actually exist.
Okay, so do you think maybe this sentence needs to be slightly differently phrased? Because it specifically says, or maybe it's in my reading, we have the ability to feel the emotion of another person, when we don't really, because the other person is just a movie we're looking at, and it lights things inside us.
I agree.
Okay.
So when we stop watching the movie, then what?
What do you mean?
I mean, when you shut off you shut all your five senses, which pretty much play the movie. Then what? What do
Then
you need to be the creator for? There's no need to be the creator because there's nothing to apply it to.
Exactly. So the idea is that we actually need to become the creator to manipulate events in this world. And that's why we're not trying to become the creator to think what we're going to do after we die. Rather, it's about having control of the life in this world.
So thinking of after we die is pretty much like thinking of the smoke that there's
Exactly.
no perception.
And the thing is, at the end of the day, the reason why we want to think of what happens after we die is number one, we don't think we're that important in this world, and we don't think the experiences that we go through are that important. So you have to have important for those, both of those. You have to have important of self, and you need important for the experiences you're going through. And when you have both of them, then you won't really care about what happens after you die. You'll be focusing on how to advance the maximum with what you currently have in your experiences.
Is there a limit? I mean, I think I know the answer, but I want to ask it nevertheless. Is there a limit to our experiences, or this is a never-ending game? And good that it is a never-ending game, because had it not been a never-ending game, then we were just moving towards our very last and final death.
I don't know.
Shame on you.
A question. Back to what Yossi mentioned about taking on and feeling the emotions of others. Ultimately, our response to what happens outside of us, whether it's young women in sorrow about the death of a sibling or a violent act we're seeing on a television, ultimately we're going to have a reaction to it, and it's really only the purpose of discerning, cleaning it, and building internal power. So feeling what someone else is feeling, it seems that it's acknowledging, no matter what the sensation is, we own it, put ourselves in their position, kind of, so to speak. But in doing that, we're discerning and cleaning it so that it becomes internal power. So as difficult as it would be for me to take on the position of someone mutilating someone, and that's one of the most grotesque things I can think of to actually witness, whether it's in a movie or in real life, the work that it would take for me to own that as me would be immense in elevating my level of internal power as I'm owning it and then discerning it and, working with it internally. So as difficult as it would be to say, yes, I feel what they feel, putting in the effort and working to gain that sense that you are actually doing it or feeling it is it's necessary. And whether or not we can get to that level and achieve that, that's without saying or determining right now. But it's the work in all of that is the purpose of it.
Jenny, listening to you, the following went through my mind, that I made my life easier in that funeral, because how simple it was to say, oh, wow, I'm feeling their sorrow, something of that nature, I'm somehow connected to them. That's really special, different, wow, whatever. That's the easy way out. I think what I took from what you said was that the harder thing is to say, wow, this is bringing up in me something really, really, really sad. Can't talk now.
The idea is not to get drowned in the emotions. The idea is to get discernments. Even if you're watching, let's say, a movie, and you're seeing someone murder someone, the idea is not to gain discernments of how to murder someone. That's not going to be very useful in your day-to-day basis. What you're going to want to absorb is the desire behind the person who's doing the murder. So, for example, when someone wants to murder someone, they have a lot of desire, right? They want to murder someone for a reason, right? It's either to protect their family or the other person has done them wrong, right? And the idea is you want to absorb that desire within you, and you're going to be basically converting that from egoism which is where someone's doing like killing for some corporeal thing, and you're going to be converting into altruism, you're going to be converting into power that you can then use when you reach internal power. You're going to be reaching situations where you're going to be able to express your internal power. But to express your internal power, you need situations of desire. Where are you going to get that desire from? Since you've already got to the point where you've said that all these frivolous desires are useless. What's the point of killing someone? What's the point of cheating? What's the point of doing all these things? They're useless. They're very low egos. They're very low manifestations of ego. So you've reached this point where you don't see any point in them. So you're basically stuck. Since you've got perfect alignment, you're aligned with the Creator, but because you're so aligned, you've got nothing to express. So the idea is you watch all these different situations where they show you all these hateful actions, where there's lots of desire behind it. Remember, there's more desire and hate before the barrier than there is in love. So you absorb all these situations. And then what that does is it gives you the desire to actually want to change things in reality. Not to change the things you're looking at, because you might be watching a TV show. So it's showing you a fictional thing that doesn't even exist. So you're not going to be like, oh, I'm going to, avenge, Darth Vader. It's like, it doesn't exist, so what's the point? It is you're going to be internalizing that desire of control, but wanting to be internal control, not external control. So you're going to get that desire from all these experiences you're going through. If you're at a funeral and you're watching people cry, it's not about trying to feel how they're feeling. What you're trying to do is sense their desire behind it. What is making them cry? Why are they crying? What do they really want? What are they really worried about? If they suddenly found it was a movie, would they act differently? And so forth. Those kind of discernments, that's what you want to collect. So you want to collect discernments, which are intellectual, and you would want to absorb their desire, their emotion, that can actually empower you to continue advancing.
And then where does the correction take place in?
That is the correction. The correction is taking something external and internalizing it. That's how you correct the ego. Correcting the ego doesn't mean reducing the ego or subduing the ego. Correcting the ego means taking the ego from wanting to do external control and making it internal control. And that's you correct the ego. So you're meant to have all the desire. Like it says, we're meant to have the intention of Mordechai, but with the vessels of Haman. So we're meant to take all these desires for external control, and we're meant to internalize them and use internal power to do that control. And what that does is the difference between external power and internal power. With external power, it's exclusive. If I'm in control, you can't be in control. But with inclusive power, with internal power, we can both be in control. You can be in the sense of self where you are the creator, and you feel that you're controlling me, and I can have my sense of self as the creator, and I feel that I'm controlling you. But because we're doing it both internally, it works out inclusive in the system.
Then what happens to the desires that cannot be fulfilled? So like the one I want to kill someone. Okay, I internalize it, but what happens to the desire?
So then you don't want to kill someone externally. You're going to use all that desire to want to kill someone externally, and you're going to internalize that desire to actually push you to advance.
And is that actually feeling the desire with the light?
It's like, I many times watch villains because they have a lot of desire. The heroes normally don't have much desire. The hero's desire is normally to stop the bad guy. The bad guy, his desire is not to stop the good guy. His desire is to actually do something, take over the world, destroy, right? And you basically absorb that desire that they actually have to want to do something, but you're going to use that desire for a little different mission. You're not going to do it to take over the world externally. You're going to use that desire to take over the world internally.
So you get to choose what to fill the desire with.
Exactly. The desire is like energy, and you decide what you want to use that energy for.
So let's say right now in my current position in my job, I have a boss who's, I want him out, basically. Okay, so I'm thinking, okay, everything that's happening right now is a great opportunity for me to desire internal power, because boy, do I want some power. No, not some. I want huge power right now to turn some events around, to change some events. and not even specifically, just to get out of reach of this, what he's doing to this place. So, that's great. It's great work for me to desire the power for that. And then I'm thinking, well, I need to see, in action, somebody manipulating or somebody ousting someone from their position. Like, I need to see Suits, the movie everybody's talking about. I don't know if that would be the one, but
Suits, yes. Suits is great.
Yeah, I need to build an intensity. I mean, it's already pretty intense to make. It's like you're in a fight or flight kind of mode already. But I think if I had some ammunition on what to, I need to intensify it. So watching, a few episodes of that would probably benefit and add to the fuel that's already brewing inside of me for internal power. And not doing any physical anything, not refusing and not, doing anything outward, just keeping it all internal.
Yeah, and I'd really recommend Suits because there's lots of power battles of who gets to be the CEO and stuff. And they oust each other and get rid of each other, and they, bring someone in and then they get rid of him and all that stuff. You can get a lot of desire from that and internalize it.
But many of these feelings are not very pleasant at all. Like, what makes your beast want to, go through them? Because I don't like feeling angry or feeling hatred and being envious. Like, they're not very pleasant feelings. How can I just still go through them? I'm wanting to go through them.
So you'd never go watch movies?
I only go watch the ones I like. I don't go watch terror movies because I know I hate being scared.
Okay, but when you watch movies, you're not going through any negative emotions?
Yes, but...
And you're enjoying them?
Mm-hmm.
Why are you enjoying them? Because your sense of self is not in the movie. Your sense of self is outside the movie. And therefore, even though you're experiencing all these situations where people might be dying or all different things might be happening, action scenes and all this stuff like, will the hero survive? He's being surrounded. Oh no! Will he be saved? Why are you enjoying it? Because your sense of self is outside of that situation. So your sense of self is in the cinema or sitting at home on the couch, right? You're experiencing all these emotions. But you actually enjoy experiencing those emotions of anger and hate and frustration and tension and love. All these emotions, you enjoy feeling them because your sense of self is not in them. Your sense of self is outside of them. And then you can actually enjoy the movie.
Exactly. And the moment I start thinking, oh shit, so the monster's gonna come out of next to me, or like, well, I'm in a real situation where I'm in love where I need to apply it, then I'm screwed.
Because your sense of self is in that situation, and then you get overwhelmed. The whole idea is that's what restriction means. That's what it means to cross the barrier. Where your sense of self is shift now to your perception outside of the movie, and then you can start to watch the movie without constantly your sense of self shifting.
Wait. Your sense of self shifts after crossing the barrier, even on descents, and then it's like watching the movie, as you said, or on descents, it retrieves to pre-maximum levels.
In descents, you're basically feeling powerless, but your sense of self is still in your perception, at least until the parser. After the parser, there's some going in, going out, and stuff like that. And after ender correction, you're basically forever in your perception, and you don't fall back into pre-barrier problems.
So basically, after the barrier, my sense of self shifts from the creator, from the sense of self I feel right now, to the sense of self.
Yeah, it shifts from where you are in egoism to altruism, from self alone to in order to bestow, from self as a human being to yourself as the creator.
I want to ask, at what stage the person starts internalizing the friend inside of him on the 1.1 to 4.4 before the barrier?
What do you mean by internalizing a friend?
Like the friend's not outside of me but inside of me, and everything he's saying and expressing, I feel it as if it was in me.
You you can have tastes of it before, but the state where you actually meant to work on it is in 4.2, where you're meant to own the will to receive, that the whole will to receive that you see outside of you is actually inside of you.
So at 4.2, the whole world is internalized inside of me.
Yes. That's what you do in 4.2, and in 4.3, you're also internalizing the creator within you.
So for now, I should only like internalize the specific persons or groups that I meet with.
You shouldn't be internalizing people where you are, you should be internalizing concepts. Don't want to do the hardest thing. Start from the easy. Start with internalizing concepts, which is what you do in 2.4. In 3.2, you'll emotionalize those concepts. And then in 4.2, you'll actually own experiences, and you'll own people, and you'll say that the whole world is actually me. They're all expressions of me.
When you say it, it sounds really clear. Now,
I'm
but
sorry.
it's
Well, I couldn't hear. I couldn't hear what you said.
what I said.
Yes, can you repeat that?
I can repeat. When Zake said last sentence, it was sound very clear, like what's happening in 2.3, I think, or 4. Doesn't matter, but it was clear the situation. I felt it. Came inside it to me, but I don't know how to organize it as a knowledge. I don't know. It should be a knowledge or not.
Well, you want it to be knowledge and emotion. So think of it like this way. With anything you're dealing with, you're first looking at information, right? You're looking at stuff. So that's intellectual. It's concepts. Then you have an emotional response to them. That's emotionalizing those concepts. And then finally, you're actually dealing with the experience that you're going through.
Then the emotionality. What is emotionality?
Emotionalizing means taking a concept and making it emotional to you. So for example, when someone's in 2.4, he'll say things like, what is bestowal? What is the method? Right? That happens in 2.4. You ask questions. What is this? What is that? In 3.2, you already know what is this, what is that. You're trying to sense it, you're trying to feel it. What does it mean to me? Right? It's more egoistic. It's like, how does this apply to me? In 2.4, it's still very philosophizing. It's like, what is it me without me in the picture? In 3.2, you add yourself into the picture. You're like, what does this mean to me? I don't care what bestowal just means. I care how does this apply to me? What am I meant to use bestowal for? And then in 4.2, you're going to be owning those experiences. You're like, how's this experience got to do with me?
This is pure gold. Thank you, Zakai.
No problem. All right, I think we'll stop here. Okay, you can go for it, Yossi.
It's going to open a can of worms. Okay, but I'll ask it nevertheless. It's interesting that the first quote you brought in this article is from the article of freedom. And I've been sort of like thinking about freedom of choice and so forth today. So I don't know if it's connected to the selfishness or the power of self or not, but could be nice talking about it, but I don't know if this is the time.
It sounds like another article.
Yes. I said it. It's too much.
All right, I think we'll end here and enter the after party.